بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Alhamdulillah, we begin our lesson in the commentary of Al-Aqaid An-Nasafiyah by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this opportunity for us to continue our lessons. After nearly 2 months we have stopped due to Ramadan and also Shawwal. And before we begin, as usual, I will just do a bit in your revision of the topic that we are in this particular book, and that we are in the part where Al-Imam An-Nasafi was speaking about Asbabul Ilm, the causes of knowledge, and the first cause that he mentioned is pertaining to the Hawas. The Hawas are the senses. So we spoke about the senses of sight, the sense of hearing, the sense of tasting, the sense of touch. So all these are the causes of knowledge, and meaning one of the ways that we have knowledge, that we acquire knowledge, is through our senses. That when you see something, you gain knowledge. When you hear something, you gain any knowledge, and likewise pertaining to the taste, that you have knowledge about the taste in a particular food, and pertaining to the sense of touch, that you know the heat or the coldness of a particular thing. So this is one of the ways, or one of the causes of knowledge. So this is point number one, which we covered in our last lessons. And then we have entered into the second part, or the second cause of knowledge, where he mentioned about Khabar al-Sadiq. So this is where we are in. Wal Khabar al-Sadiq. So if you can see, the one in bracket is the words of Al-Imam An-Nasafi. Al-Imam An-Nasafi. So the one, the commentary, that is the commentary of Imam Taftazani, are the ones without the brackets. So the second sabab, as what he mentioned, as-sabab al-thani al-Khabar al-Sadiq. It is truthful reports. Truthful reports. So sometimes you do not see, you do not use your senses, in a sense, you do not see it, you do not witness it, but somebody else inform you about a particular event, or a particular place, or a particular story that took place. So if this event and this reports is a true kind of report, then that is also one of the causes of knowledge, despite that you are not witnessing that event yourself, but somebody else is informing you, and if this information is true, then that is the cause of knowledge. And the meaning of truth is what we mentioned, mutabiqun lil waqi', that the meaning of truth is something that coincide with the reality, something that coincide with reality. So let me give you a simple example. And if somebody informs you there is a fire, for example, 10 kilometers away at a particular place, somebody comes to you and say that there was a fire, a car was burned down about 10 kilometers away. You do not see it, but you trust this person, and he is informing you a true incident that really occur in reality. So it coincide with the reality, or we say it correspond with the reality. So this is an example of Khabar al-Sadiq, that this report is a truthful one. So this is basically what we were speaking in the our last lesson. And then the author mentioned that Khabar al-Sadiq, they are of two types. So all this we have covered. The author Al-Imam Taftazani in the commentary, and he speaks about what is the meaning of mutabiq lil waqi'. He says fa innal khabara kalamun yakunu li nisbatihi kharij tatabuqihi. It coincides or corresponds with the reality outside. So this is fayakunu sadiqan, it becomes truthful. Aw la yutabiquhu fayakunu kadiban. If that report does not correspond to the reality that's happening, then it is a false statement. طيب. So basically what he's saying is that a report and it can be truthful or can be false. A report and it can be truthful and can be false. And then he mentioned that there are of two types. There are of two types. Reports and are of truthful and reports. They comes in the form of two types of reports. So this is where we are in. We have entered into this particular part where he speaks about al-khabarul mutawatir. So this is basically where we stop actually, since our last lesson. So basically before this all he speaks about how do you know whether a particular report is true or a particular report is false, whether it corresponds to the reality or does not correspond to the reality. So when we are speaking about khabar sadiq, the truthful reports they are divided into two categories. So this is basically where he's heading to. He's going to speak about the two categories of truthful reports. That is khabar as-sadiq. So number one, he say ahaduhuma al-khabar al-mutawatir. Al-khabar al-mutawatir. And I believe I have explained basically what is the meaning of khabar al-mutawatir. So in English we call it a mass transmitted report. This is a better translation for khabar mutawatir. So basically khabar mutawatir is a large group of people who informs you about a particular statement or a particular report, which due to the large number of the people who inform you of the statement, it is impossible that they get together to form up a lie. They come together to form up a lie. So for example, if you heard any reports, like earlier we mentioned about somebody inform you that 10 kilometers away there is a fire. There is a fire. So if one person informs you, you can be doubtful and maybe it's not true. Maybe the report is not correct. Maybe it does not correspond to the reality. Maybe somebody is lying, or somebody has a false interpretation. It can happen. But if you look at the news and 100 people contacted you, for example, inform you that there is a fire 10 kilometers away, and you saw it in the news, and more people in the hundreds inform you, or in the thousands inform you, or through WhatsApp messages, and like nowadays through YouTube, through all the social media, then 10 kilometers away there is a fire. Now you come to a state of conviction. Now you come to a state of conviction, because it is impossible that all these reports are false, because it comes in different ways, and the number of people who are reporting exceed the number, which is impossible for all of them to come out with a plan to lie, where we say it is impossible. So this is basically the meaning of al-khabar al-mutawatir. So the author define in the Arabic language, summiya bidhalika lima annahu la yaqa'u daf'atan bal ala ta'aqubi wa tawali. It comes continuously, one after the other. وهو الخبر الثابت على ألسنة قوم لا يتصور تواطؤهم أي لا يجوز العقل توافقهم على الكذب. This is what basically what I mentioned earlier, that it is impossible for all these reports and all these people, the large number of people who inform you about the report, all of them is lying. So it is impossible. This is what the author mentioned. لا يجوز العقل توافقهم على الكذب, that you cannot come to what you call it, a conclusion or an understanding based on conviction that these people are lying, all the people that are informing you about a particular report, all of them are lying. This is impossible. So this is basically the meaning of at-tawatur. Wa misdaquhu wuqu'ul ilmi min ghairi shubhatin. So there are two aspects here. We have the report in itself, and the occurrence of the reported. So when we say that the mass transmitted in a report is based on conviction, yaqeen, al-ilm here meaning 100% in a conviction. What is the meaning in a 100% in conviction? Meaning there can be no doubt that this report is true. 1,000 people inform you that 10 kilometers away from your house that there is a fire. 1,000 people, your neighbors, your relatives, what you call it, the WhatsApp groups, and for example, the number yani is what you call comes any in the thousands, and for example, that inform you something any happen, like what is happening any for example in Palestine, correct or not? All any the news, any channels that you see, and the people that you know, all of them are informing any something any is happening, something is happening in Baitul Maqdis, and you come to a conviction that yes, there are things any that is happening. People write any in the news, people write any in social media, everyone is talking any about it. Thousands of people are reporting, for example, about what is any happening. So this knowledge is al-ilm, yani is based any on conviction. This knowledge any because of the great number of people any reporting, it comes any to a state any of conviction. So when it comes any to a state of conviction, it tells you that what happened yani is also based on conviction. That what is happening based on the knowledge, based on the knowledge, and it is based on conviction. That means the occurrence any is true. The occurrence is based on conviction, based any on the knowledge that was any reported. So here Al-Imam Taftazani, so if you look any at these words, these are the words any of Al-Imam Taftazani. It's not in bracket. So you say wa misdaquhu wuqu'ul ilmi min ghairi shubhatin. That since any the knowledge and is based any on conviction, the occurrence is also any based any on conviction, min ghairi shubha, without any doubt. طيب. وهو بالضرورة. وهو بالضرورة. So we have any this word any darura. Darura any basically it is based any on conviction. It is based any on conviction, where it is not any required any for a person any to reflect any upon. Yani if 1,000 people comes to you and inform you any about a particular thing, it doesn't take time any for you any to reflect and to ponder any upon what any they are saying. This is knowledge of conviction any based any on darura. So he said wa huwa bid-darurati mujibun lil ilmi ad-daruri. Mujibun lil ilmi ad-daruri. So because any of this mass transmitted any reports, it brings any about knowledge any that is any conviction. So due to the fact any that the number any of people any who are reporting, it is impossible any for them to come out any with something any that is false. So this knowledge, it is based any on conviction, and the occurrence any is based any on conviction. So we call this any ilmu daruri, yani knowledge any that is based any on darura, that is based any on conviction, and also any it is based on knowledge that is not required for us any to do any a lot of ponderance due to its clarity. So he say mujibun lil ilmi daruri. Then he gives any example. What are some any of the examples of mass transmitted any reports? The knowledge any based any on mass transmitted any reports. So he said kal ilmi bil mulukil khaliyah fil azminatil madiyah. So like any the past kingdoms, al muluk al khaliyah, the kings any of the old times. So for example, when we study any history, for example, we read any about the kingdom any of Pharaoh, the kingdom any of the pharaohs in Egypt. There are the pyramids, the Sphinx, and then Ramesses any the second and the Pharaoh, where Allah mentioned any in the Quran. The Quran speaks about the people of Ad, the people of Thamud. Today, if you go into such any places, you can still find any the remains. But imagine if you have not been any to these places, you have not any been any to Egypt, but you know that historians and people pass this information and from generations and into generations, that there is any a person by the name of Pharaoh, or the name any of Ramses any the second. It is said any Pharaoh any is a title any of the kings of Egypt, and the biblical any name any of this what do you call it? They call it the Pharaoh any is called Ramses any, wallahu alam. The Quran any mention any Pharaoh any as Pharaoh any, the Pharaoh any of Musa. So the Pharaoh any of Musa was mentioned any in the Quran. It's mentioned any in the what you call it in the Bible. Is mentioned by the historians. So this knowledge is known any to a lot any of people. It is a knowledge any that is passed down, and by generations any of generations. So this is an example of knowledge that is based on mass transmitted reports. So it is what he is saying, kal ilmi bil muluk al khaliya, of the past kings. So we can give a lot of examples like Fir'aun, the past kings like Nebuchadnezzar, like Alexander the Great, and for example, these are the characteristics that we read in our history. So the knowledge towards these reports of the kingdoms of the past, this is based on mass transmitted reports. So since it is based on mass transmitted reports, it brings conviction, it brings al-ilm, al-yaqeen, it brings any knowledge that is based on yaqeen, and it is daruri, where there is not much require any of us to ponder whether this particular report is true or false, because in its nature it is something that is based on conviction. So this is the example is kal ilmi bil muluk al khaliyati fil azminat al madiya, yani in the past azminat al madiya, wal buldan al na'iyah, and the what you call it, the old civilizations or the old places and countries. Last time, for example, we heard about the Roman Empire. We heard about the Greeks, correct or not? We heard about the Persian Empire, before the coming what you call it, the coming of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we study this in history, and it is brought down through generations. So all this brings knowledge that is based on conviction. This is an example of mass transmitted reports, and it is knowledge that is based on conviction. And then he mentioned yuhtamalu al-atfu ala al-muluki wa ala al-azmina. Now this is on the Arabic grammar, we have this atf, because when we say kal ilmi bil muluki al-khaliyati fil azminati al-madiyati wal buldan an-na'iyah. So whether this buldan na'iyah, it goes back to muluk or it goes back to azmina. So there are two possibilities. But the author mentioned wal awwalu akrab. Wal awwalu akrab. Yani it is more appropriate that this wal buldani na'iyah goes back to bil muluk. Yani as though the author is saying bil wa kal ilmi bil muluk al khaliya wal buldani na'iyah. So according to Al-Imam Taftazani, that is the closest. The closest in a sense, and closest in meaning. Even though it is far from further from it, in comparison to fil azminatil madiyah. So this one he says wa in kana ab'ad. So in terms of meaning, it suits the meaning that kal ilmi bil muluk al khaliya wal buldani na'iyah, more than we say kal ilmi bil muluk al khaliyati fil azminatil madiyati wal buldani na'iyah. So it is ma'tuf to bil muluk, kal ilmi bil muluk al khaliya wal buldani na'iyah, even though it is mentioned further. So this is basically what you call it, some possibilities pertaining to the meaning, whether it goes back into muluk or it goes back into al azmina. So both have possibilities, but that is not much of importance, and it is just some meaning based on the Arabic grammar. But what is important is that we understand what is the author is trying to say when it comes to the examples of khabar mutawatir. Before I continue, there is something important I want to say, that in Islam, only the religion of Islam has this principle of khabar mutawatir. This is the topic that I will like to talk a bit, because it is important for us Muslims to appreciate this principle of khabar mutawatir. So what do I mean when I say only Islam? Only Islam. So let us look at the Quran in comparison to other books, of Revelation. When it comes to the Quran is revealed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we have the Sahaba who memorize the Quran. There are many companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam who memorize the Quran, and their numbers are nearly Their numbers are in the hundreds or not in the thousands. Many of them memorized during the lifetime of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So when the Prophet passed away, they taught the Quran to the Tabi'in. And there are more people amongst the Tabi'in who memorize the Quran, more than the Sahaba, because the Muslims during the time of Tabi'in are much more than the Muslims during the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So now we witness there is a transmission of the Quran from the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and their number reached by the thousands. And this transmission enters into the next generation, which is the Tabi'in. And the number of people who memorize the Quran within the Tabi'in are much more than those within the time of the Sahaba. And then comes the Tabi'in, and their number is much more greater than the Tabi'in. And the number of people who memorize the Quran are far much greater than the number of the Tabi'in who memorize the Quran. And likewise, after the Tabi'in comes what you call it, the generations that succeeded them, and all the way until our time. So we find the Muslims they are getting more and more people memorize the Quran. So this is an example. We say that the Quran is mutawatir. So when you study, for example, you study usulul fiqh or you study mustalah hadith, you will come across this notion about khabar mutawatir and ahad. So the Quran is mutawatir. So if a person tells you what is the meaning, and when we say Quran is mutawatir, that is the example I gave. That it is transmitted from a mass number of people from one generation to another generation. So the Quran that comes to us is mutawatir. So it is based on conviction. It is based on conviction. Likewise, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the story of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is transmitted from the Sahaba to the Tabi'in, to the Tabi'in until today. So now we have the conviction that our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam he was alive at that time, that he was born in Mecca and he passed away in Medina. And the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam also that they were narrated by the Sahaba in the thousands. So so many of these reports of the hadith, it is by mass number of people who reported. For example, we have the hadith as what Al-Imam Muslim he mentioned, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam he said, "Man kadhaba alayya muta'ammidan falyatabawwa maq'adahu minan nar." Yani those who say something of a lie, using my name, and say something a lie against me, then he has to book his place in the hellfire, meaning he will be made na'udzubillah min zalik to enter into the hellfire. So Al-Imam Muslim he mentioned this is an example of hadith mutawatir. So Al-Quran, all of the Quran is mutawatir, no doubt, without any doubt, because the Quran is memorized by hundreds and not thousands of the Sahaba during the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this has reached into a number where it is impossible that people can lie. So the Quran comes into us in a way of mutawatir, and likewise the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but not all of the hadiths. Bismillah. Because so many hadiths, for example, there are many who reported from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam by the hundreds. But there are some hadiths, for example, you find only one Sahabi who reported from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this is an example of hadith ahad. So when it comes to the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we have hadith mutawatir and we have hadith ahad. When it comes into the Quran, all of the Quran is mutawatir. Now going back into what I mentioned, I said that only Islam has the principle of mass transmitted reports in its belief system. So meaning today when we speak about the Quran, we say the Quran is based on khabar mutawatir. If you make a comparison of the Quran and other books of other faiths, they do not have this notion of khabar mutawatir, that it is not something that can be established within their tradition, that they have sayings for example of their prophets of a particular thing, that it is narrated by narrators with a connected chain. Because we have to understand, when we look at the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we have the sanad. So for example, Al-Imam Bukhari, he narrated the hadith, innamal a'malu bin niyat, yani from Fulan ibn Fulan, from Fulan ibn Fulan, all the way to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we have disconnected chain. Likewise, Imam Muslim and our other imams. But you will not find this tradition of narrating with chains of negation and with the conditions. The conditions of Sihha, the conditions of Hasan, whether this particular hadith is authentic or not authentic, or it is weak or it is Hasan. With this tradition of Mustalah hadith, it is only present in the Islamic faith. Yani if you make a comparison Islam and other religion, you will not see other religion have this thing that is they call mustalah, yani hadith or mustalah, when comes into the sayings of their prophets. And our Quran, yani we make comparison to the other books found today. Only the Quran is not changed. The Quran is not changed since the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam until today. It is narrated by khabar mutawatir, and not a single letter has changed, which you will not find in other traditions. So as Muslims, it is important for us to study this concept of khabar mutawatir, to look at our sources and to study about the transmission of the Quran, the study about the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Those who study this knowledge, then you will appreciate the truth of Islam and the strength of the religion of Islam in comparison to other religions. So this what you call it, something that I would like to speak about, because I feel it is important, especially nowadays. We Muslims we must study our religion properly, so that we avoid doubts in our hearts. Then he mentioned, so earlier we spoke about this. So he gave an example of the past kingdoms, and then he said, Faha huna amran. So there are two things here, and he said, number one, and he said, ahaduhuma anna al-mutawatira mujibun lil ilmi. This, as what we mentioned, that the mass transmitted in the reports, mujibun lil ilmi. What is mujibun lil ilmi? Meaning it brings about 100% conviction. The meaning of knowledge here is basically, it means yaqeen. It what you call it, it brings about conviction. Wadhalika bid-darurati. Wadhalika bid-darurati. Darura here, yani it doesn't require a person to ponder, because it is something that is natural. That whenever you have 1,000, or you have, for example, numbers like 10,000 people or 20,000 people telling you the same thing, of course you will believe. Fa inna najidu min anfusina al-ilma bi wujudi Makkah. Then he gave also example. So he said that we know that there is a country that is what you call it, that is called Makkah and Baghdad, and we have not been to Makkah. Imagine, and if you have not been to Makkah, are you convinced that there is a country, or there is a place that is called Makkah? There is a place that is called Baghdad. We know the country Iraq. A lot of us have not been to these places, but we are convinced. We are convinced that it exists. We are convinced that it exists, and we read any newspapers for many years, and we hear the news, for example, and there are people who went and came back and told us about how it looked like, and so on and so forth. So it doesn't need some kind of ponderance for us to come to the conclusion and the conviction that these places exist. Wa annahu laysa illa bil ikhbar. And how do we get this conviction? It is by ikhbar, and it's reports that we receive. This is in a situation where people have not gone to that place. So it doesn't mean that you have not been there, that you cannot be convinced that it exists. So if 1,000 people informs you that he went into this particular place and it is called Baghdad, imagine then you come into a conviction that there is a place that is called Baghdad. And likewise all other places, for example, there are other places that a lot of people have been to, and we have not been to, but we heard about those about any of those places. Wasani, and the second thing, and he mentioned أن العلم الحاصل به ضروري, that the knowledge any that we get from those any reports is also knowledge that is based on daruri. Knowledge any that is based any on what you call it, that it is any daruri. That it is based, not only we say it is based any on conviction, but it is based any on darura, meaning yani it is something any that it's not what you call it, something any that require any ponderance. That's what I mentioned. وَذَلِكَ لِأَنَّهُ يَحْصُلُ لِلْمُسْتَدِلِ وَغَيْرِهِ حَتَّى السِّبْيَانِ. Why it is ilmu daruri? So he gave an example. Even children can have any that conviction. Even children any can have the conviction. So this shows any that even children can understand. Not necessarily any a person al-mustadil who looks any at the evidences any for him any to come to the conviction, but even children any can understand. Alladhi la ihtida'a lahum bi tariq al-iktisab. Those children or people any who doesn't have any then faculty to understand arguments, wa tartib al-muqaddimat, to understand the premises any of arguments. So even any children any can have any then what you call it, that any conviction. Then he mentioned وَأَمَّا خَبَرُ النَّصَارَى بِقَتْلِ عِيسَى عَلَيْهِ السَّلَامِ وَالْيَهُودِ بِتَأْبِيدِ دِينِ مُوسَى عَلَيْهِ السَّلَامِ فَتَوَاتُرُهُ مَمْنُوعٌ. And then he mentioned about what about if a person speaks about the reports of the Christians pertaining to the killing of Nabi Isa alayhi salam, and what you call it, what the Jews mentioned that the religion of Musa alayhi salam will prolong. So the author mentioned fatawaturuhu mamnu', that this kind of reports, it is not any reports that is based on khabar mutawatir. It is not any report that is what you call it within the conditions of khabar mutawatir. So we have to understand what is the meaning of khabar mutawatir. So earlier we mentioned that there is a mass number of people who reported that event, that event pertaining to the death of Nabi Isa alayhi salam. The thing about the death of Nabi Isa alayhi salam, it was not any reported, it was not any what you call it made during the time of Nabi Isa alayhi salam. It was not any reported during the time of Nabi Isa alayhi salam. Yani they knew and they have doubts whether that particular person that was caught, whether he is Isa alayhi salam or not Isa alayhi salam. So this notion when people mention that it was Isa alayhi salam, it came later. It came later. So here when we speak about witnessing any event, we are speaking about witnessing an event that number one is occurring at that particular time. Those people who are present at that particular time. This is point number one. Point number two, the Quran speaks about the false statement of those who says that Nabi Isa alayhi salam was killed on the cross. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran. For example, وَمَا قَتَلُوهُ وَمَا صَلَبُوهُ. They do not kill him and they do not crucify him. So this is against what is the truth. So earlier we mentioned that khabar sadiq, one of the conditions of a report to be true, that it must correspond to reality. But if it doesn't correspond to reality, it is a lie. It is not something that can be true. So the conditions of khabar mutawatir, number one, it must be witnessed by people who have reached the number of mass transmitted reports a large number of people, as what we mentioned, where it is impossible for them to come to a state where they are lying about a particular thing. And number two, it must correspond to the reality. If we understood by conviction, by another report, that it is a lie, or it is not true, or people misunderstood and so on, then the conditions of tawatur what you call it cannot be applied. So likewise, any pertaining any to what any the Jews any mention any pertaining any to the yani religion of Nabi Musa alayhi salam. So it is what you call it the same any as what we mentioned pertaining to the conditions any of tawatur, that is not present. So inshallah any ta'ala, we will any stop here any for tonight, and we will continue any next week and inshallah in our lesson, and inshallah and we will continue any from here. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us any with tawfiq and hidayah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Allahumma salli wa sallim ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali sayyidina Muhammad. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. الحمد لله رب العالمين.